Welcome to Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses.
Today we are discussing AI is My Best Reader, is it? Written by Fred James.
So, jumping into our deep dive today, our mission is to extract the absolute most crucial insights from this research on cultural fluency.
Right.
We want to bypass those, simple translation errors we usually hear about and really look at the deep psychology of global marketing.
Exactly.
And for those of you who are beginners on the front lines of launching a campaign, you quickly realize that marketing globally requires far more than just running your copy through an automated translation tool and hoping for the best.
It requires crafting a message that feels native.
Right. Something that resonates on a profound emotional level with your target audience.
Yep.
We are exploring how the very architecture of a campaign has to shift depending on the cultural lens it is being viewed through.
Because the business implications of getting that cultural lens wrong are massive.
Oh, absolutely.
A misunderstanding in a global campaign doesn't just result in a slightly confused consumer. It actively degrades brand equity and can derail an entire product launch.
Yeah, you see companies pour millions into product development only to stumble at the finish line.
Because they assumed their domestic messaging would just neatly parachute into a foreign market.
And that friction is incredibly common in the tech sector, especially when dealing with abstract concepts like software.
The Microsoft example.
Yes. Fred James brings up this fascinating situation Microsoft faced. They were trying to communicate the strength of their security updates.
Right.
And the creative team decided to use the metaphor of reinforced concrete to convey that sense of impenetrable safety.
Which is a perfect study in linguistic context.
Yeah.
Because in English, pairing reinforced concrete with security immediately evokes imagery of a vault.
Or a bunker.
A solid foundation, exactly. The psychological response is a feeling of being protected.
But translated directly into other languages.
It stripped away the metaphorical weight entirely. It left only the literal meaning. Consumers were staring at messaging from a premier software company and trying to decipher why their digital operating system was being compared to a sidewalk.
Or a construction site, which introduces a completely unnecessary cognitive load on the user.
Absolutely.
Instead of feeling secure, you are actively distracted. You're trying to solve a riddle that the marketing team didn't even know they wrote.
And these blind spots aren't always big, clunky, physical metaphors either.
Right. Sometimes the friction comes down to the smallest possible units of language.
Like Mercedes-Benz.
Yes. Looking at the consumer vehicles market, Mercedes-Benz utilized the English tagline, "The ultimate in luxury."
On a whiteboard in a corporate headquarters, that looks incredibly sleek and assertive.
Very sleek.
But the danger lies in the tiny preposition, in.
It's wild how much power one word has.
Language possesses a delicate geometry. Prepositions often do the heaviest lifting when establishing tone. When that phrase is localized, the word in can drastically alter the brand's perceived prestige.
Because in one market, the direct translation maintains that empowering, sophisticated aura.
But in another, the literal equivalent of in luxury feels incredibly awkward, passive, or even grammatically broken.
And from a campaign management perspective, that is the worst case scenario.
Without a doubt.
When the grammar feels off, it sparks a massive discussion among consumers online.
And it's not a discussion about the vehicle's engineering?
No, or the sleek interior. It's a discussion about how a luxury automaker couldn't afford a decent copywriter.
It completely shatters the illusion of prestige they're trying to sell.
The consumer's attention is entirely hijacked by the linguistic error. Which brings us to how we actually fix this.
By moving beyond translation entirely.
Right, embracing transcreation. So for the beginners listening, how do we define that?
Adapting a campaign for a new culture is remarkably similar to a director adapting a beloved novel into a film.
I love that analogy.
You aren't just pointing a camera at actors reading the book aloud. You have to capture the underlying essence, the unwritten emotion, and the subtle nuances.
And then rebuild those elements using the tools of a completely different medium.
Exactly. Transcreation is the process of dissecting the emotional core of your message and rebuilding it from the ground up using local cultural blueprints.
Apple actually provides a brilliant masterclass in how to execute this within the consumer electronics space.
The pro product tagline.
Yes. The research details how they approached the localization of that tagline in Taiwan.
A less experienced team would have simply found the direct phonetic or literal equivalent of the word pro and just pasted it onto the billboards.
But instead, the localization team identified the specific cultural vibe they wanted to hit.
That sense of understated, undeniable quality.
Right. And they added the equivalent of the word just, making it just. It's
It
pro.
is a phenomenal strategic move. It perfectly aligns with a cultural preference for quiet confidence,
The brand isn't screaming about its technical specifications.
or aggressively demanding the consumer's attention.
Ow.
By framing it as just pro, they communicate that the quality is self-evident.
That is the absolute essence of transcreation. They understood the local temperament and recalibrated the phrasing so it felt organically native to that specific market.
And that kind of recalibration isn't limited to a few words on a billboard. It has to stretch across the brand's entire personality.
Which requires intense situational awareness from the marketing team. Like we see brands in the consumer product space, like Durex.
They operate with a highly distinct, provocative, and often cheeky brand personality.
And it is incredibly effective because the edgy tone perfectly matches the nature of the product.
And the target demographic.
Right.
But the elasticity of a brand's voice has strict limits, dictated entirely by context.
Right.
A highly charged, irreverent tone works wonders for lifestyle or intimacy products.
Yeah.
But applying that exact same corporate persona to a sensitive medical device,
Like a COVID test kit?
that would trigger an immediate consumer revolt.
Oh, completely. It would destroy any semblance of trust.
The public expectation for a medical product is authority, safety, and clarity.
Which really illustrates the danger of operating in a creative vacuum. You can't workshop a brand identity without running it past local cultural consultants.
The research includes a severe cautionary tale
Yeah.
about a craft beer launch that failed to do exactly that.
The alcohol lifestyle phrase.
Yes, the agency built a campaign around the phrase alcohol lifestyle, trying to capture a premium, laid-back vibe.
In a boardroom setting, removed from the reality of the target market, it probably sounded like a trendy, sophisticated angle.
But the catastrophic failure occurred because, within that specific cultural market, the phrase was inextricably linked to a famous, emotionally heavy film dealing with the realities of alcoholism.
They inadvertently tied their fun new beverage directly to a narrative of addiction and trauma.
It highlights how localized cultural auditing is non-negotiable. You have to know what ghosts are attached to the words you are using.
And that brings us to what might be the single trickiest hurdle in all of global marketing.
Humor.
Humor. Everyone thinks their brand is funny.
But comedy is arguably the most subjective element of human communication. It functions almost entirely on a foundation of shared cultural assumptions.
Unspoken context.
When you attempt to export a joke, you are usually leaving the context behind. A prime example from the author revolves around the clever play on words. Every con has its pros.
If you are marketing a film about charismatic jewel thieves, that tagline is memorable, sharp, and highly engaging.
It sets the exact right expectation for a heist movie.
But the cognitive dissonance of taking that exact same linguistic structure and applying it to a financial services firm is staggering.
The result would be an immediate exodus of clients.
You are essentially telling your customers that your financial institution is operating a scam.
Exactly. If the audience doesn't share the exact same contextual framing, the humor doesn't just fall flat, it actively signals danger,
It demonstrates a severe lack of judgment.
which immediately damages the core pillar of any business relationship, and that's trust.
Building and protecting that trust requires looking beyond the text entirely, though.
The visual language.
Right. The visual language, a brand deploys the imagery, colors, layout, composition, the fonts. It all speaks volumes before the consumer even processes a single word.
Visuals are the absolute first touch point, and the threshold for what communicates value is wildly different across the globe.
Fred James' analysis of the consumer goods market in Japan versus the West is a perfect illustration of this visual divide.
In Japan, product packaging frequently utilizes a high density of visual information.
Intricate, layered illustrations, multiple vibrant colors, heavily detailed blocks of text.
And in that cultural context, overwhelming the visual senses isn't seen as cluttered. It is interpreted as transparency.
It signals to the consumer that the manufacturer has invested heavily in the product and is eager to share all of its valuable features.
But the moment you carry that exact same packaging into a Western market, the visual translation breaks down.
Because Western consumers have been heavily conditioned to associate negative space and minimalism with premium value.
Think about the archetypal high-end perfume ad.
A sleek glass bottle, vast amounts of white space, a solitary, elegant font.
It radiates quiet confidence. But taking that Western minimalist aesthetic and dropping it into a market that expects visual density completely backfires.
To a consumer expecting detailed proof of value, a minimalist box doesn't look chic or luxurious.
It looks cheap, unfinished, and devoid of effort. It suggests the company couldn't be bothered to explain why their product is worth buying.
And conversely, introducing highly detailed Japanese packaging to a Western audience often results in visual fatigue.
They find it loud, chaotic, and difficult to parse. You might have the best product in the world, but if you are speaking the wrong visual language, the consumer will never pick it up off the shelf.
Which just proves a fundamental reality of our industry. You cannot treat an audience like a monolith.
You cannot market to a Gen Z gamer deeply embedded in internet culture the same way you market to a retired academic.
Even if they live in the same geographic location.
They operate within entirely different cultural ecosystems. You must segment your audience and understand their specific worlds.
And the depth of that segmentation becomes incredibly apparent when we examine the Japanese concept of Oshi.
To truly grasp the power of Oshi, we have to contrast it against traditional Western ideas of fandom.
In the last, fandom is typically tethered to massive entertainment properties, right?
A blockbuster movie franchise, a global pop star, a major sports team.
But Oshi is far more granular and encompasses a much broader spectrum of devotion.
An individual can have an Oshi for a highly specific, localized brand of snack food, or a particular style of traditional handmade pottery.
What fascinates me from a frontline perspective is that Oshi isn't just a pattern of repeat purchasing. It is an identity marker.
It represents a profound emotional integration into the consumer's daily life.
They are actively championing the product and tying their own personal narrative to the success of the brand. It's not transactional.
And the strategic warning for marketers here is absolute. You cannot manufacture that level of devotion through superficial tactics.
You can't just license a popular animated character, slap it onto your packaging, and expect an Oshi community to embrace your product.
These communities possess incredibly sophisticated cultural radar. They will instantly recognize and reject a transactional, inauthentic cash grab.
To actually earn a place in that ecosystem, you have to do the work. You have to understand the deep-seated values, the unwritten rules, and the ongoing stories that those consumers hold dear.
And the speed of the digital world makes that commitment more critical than ever.
So true. Shifting to digital marketing, the internet is so globalized and fast-paced. We are operating in an environment where everything is optimized for SEO and keywords.
But the way we approach digital visibility has to be viewed through this lens of cultural fluency. The evolution of search algorithms has fundamentally changed the rules of engagement.
Right, the end of keyword stuffing.
In the early iterations of the internet, marketers could manipulate visibility by artificially inflating their content with specific keywords, regardless of the actual user experience.
But today, search engines prioritize quality.
Advanced AI measures cultural sentiment, semantic relevance, and user intent. The algorithm is no longer just reading the text, it is analyzing how humans react to the text.
Which means the goal is providing actual value to the human reading it. If your transcreation feels clunky or your visual language creates friction, the user is going to bounce off your page immediately.
And the AI measures that rapid departure and penalizes your brand's visibility. Your cultural fluency directly dictates your algorithmic success.
You aren't trying to trick a machine. You are building trust.
And trust in the digital space is a slow, methodical burn. Brands constantly chase the elusive metric of going viral.
But a sudden spike in attention is entirely worthless if the underlying infrastructure of the brand doesn't culturally resonate with the new audience.
First impressions online are forged in milliseconds. If the messaging feels tone-deaf, the user is gone before they even finish reading the headline.
Cultural awareness is the baseline requirement for digital survival. Now let's flip the script for a moment. We spent a lot of time analyzing how massive global conglomerates try to wedge themselves into local markets.
But the research also explores the reverse trajectory.
Exactly. How do local Asian brands successfully scale their operations outward onto the highly competitive global stage?
The data reveals two distinct, highly effective frameworks for this. The first framework relies on fiercely leaning into heritage.
In consumer goods, right, like beautifully crafted Japanese knives.
Or hand-woven Indian silk scarves. Rather than attempting to mimic the sleek, sanitized aesthetics of Western mass production, these brands anchor their entire value proposition in their deep historical roots.
They use their authenticity and tradition as a massive selling point.
In a global marketplace completely flooded with identical factory-line products, the human element of craftsmanship becomes a massive luxury signal.
They aren't diluting their identity to fit in. They are forcing the global market to recognize the value of their specific cultural history,
And the second approach is the hybrid or fusion approach.
which requires a delicate balancing act.
These brands extract the core essence of their cultural heritage, perhaps a specific philosophy of design, a traditional material, or a historic motif, and they synthesize it with contemporary global trends.
They wrap traditional authenticity in a modern, highly accessible shell. I think that's such a smart way to redefine what it means to be a global brand today.
It completely redefines it. You don't have to erase your origins to gain international traction. You just have to translate the value of those origins into a language the rest of the world can appreciate.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I have to ask you, what is the secret sauce? How do you actually master cultural awareness in marketing?
The secret sauce is cultivating genuine curiosity and rigorous empathy.
Empathy.
Don't just memorize a static checklist of regional do's and don'ts. The global landscape shifts entirely too fast for that. You must commit to being a perpetual student of human behavior, actively investigating how different societies construct meaning and assign value.
Here is a final provocative thought for everyone listening to mull over on their own. We are rapidly approaching a horizon where AI translation tools will become virtually flawless.
Oh, absolutely.
The mechanical barrier of language is going to disappear completely. Soon, everyone will be able to speak everyone else's language with perfect grammatical precision. And when that happens, cultural fluency, the ability to understand those silent, unspoken rules, the visual cues, and the emotional context of a society, that will be the only competitive advantage you have left. Are you ready for that?
Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts on today's episode or marketing topics, feel free to leave a comment below the video. This is Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses. See you next time.